Do you want to start with Kyle?
Kyle Wolpser.
Doris Davis Fritch.
David Stites.
And I just realized I was not turned on my speaker, but. So to start out tonight, if we could review the meeting minutes. Did anyone have any comments, concerns, revisions? I was fine with it. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. So on to new business. There were a few properties that we were going to just discuss for local landmark purposes. I know that Doris had maybe a couple of properties that you might just want to talk a little bit about, and I know Dave was going to not talk about it, but Jill had brought forward that there was the property on North Main Street that was interested in potentially being designated, so Dave
Yes.
had put up his hand and.
Yep, I'll
Do
be
you wanna
working.
start with
I
that?
have
Just-
started working on that property. I'm not prepared to present anything on it, but I will take the lead on that one.
I'm sorry, but I'm in the same
115
boat.
North Main.
But I did have several that I thought we should look at because they were highly rated, and I had done a bit of research already. But we do need to have a discussion on our National Register district boundaries because I don't want to go forward with an individual designation discussion with an owner when we may be having a similar discussion with them about the National Register. I think it'd be too confusing, and I just want to hold on those properties until we decide what we're doing for the National Register, because that would open the conversation for our local designation. It's a good route in to having good conversations with these owners about preservation. But I think it would be too confusing right now for us to approach these people if we also include them, same street, same neighborhood in our National Register property boundaries. I think we just need to hold on those. I'll have to find some in the other part of town.
I think that's completely fair. So we've got David that is going to be working on 115 North Main, if I heard correctly. Okay.
And, I know we talked a little bit last time about off again. It was on? Yeah. Oh, I felt like I couldn't hear it. Sorry, Kara. Okay. It didn't, but it had been on and I didn't turn it off. So about bringing designations to the commission, we had a little bit of a conversation a couple months ago about how to do that. And I was thinking again, and maybe we came up with a plan, but I did not recall that. And I was thinking that if, for instance, I know, you fill out the form and the different areas that you think are important, go through it, and maybe if you fill out a form for the house that you're proposing, and it could be sent to us prior to the meeting, then we could all review it prior to the meeting. The person who was presenting could just do the basics then, maybe take 5 minutes, throw up some photographs, give the basic reasons, maybe 4 to 5 points about why you thought this would be suitable. And we would already have some background because we would have read it before we got here. And that could move it along so we're not presenting it twice, So I don't know, does that sound like a good plan?
Sure. But again, Once we have the discussion on our boundaries, then I can make a decision on what I might want to present first. Thank you.
Did anyone else have anything to say about local landmark designation? So I did send some information in an email about our National Register discussion, but I might go through it again here if everyone is up for that, because it was weeks ago and it might be a good reminder. But Doris, Jill, and I met with our new SHPO County Rep, Sarah Evanson, and her coordinator of the SHPO Survey and National Register Unit, Chelsea Towers. Earlier last month, wasn't it? It was the beginning of October. And honestly, it was the most beautiful day. It was warm and sunny. Both of them want to move to Fairport. But it was just great. And they were very, very impressed with the areas that we were looking at. And I know that Doris really gave them a very good tour to both of them about all of the different houses and the streets and the history and the architecture and everything. So they had a lot of questions, and I know you were able to answer them. So it was great. And Jill and I just got to have our walk, and it was wonderful. So when we came back to the office, they had been talking amongst themselves, and they had some pretty strong feelings about the area that we had proposed. And the first thing was, there were three major items. One was to move the historic time frame to 1930. We had proposed 1903 because we had those certain boundaries, and we felt that most of the houses within those boundaries and the architecture that we were looking at in that time period, that would be appropriate. But I did remember after they said it that Virginia also had noted that she felt it should be a broader time frame. And one of the things they had said is that there were too many non-contributing buildings within that area if we did 1903. And also, they felt strongly that we should move the boundaries, so that's getting into number 2, move the district boundaries all the way up to the west, up to and including Nelson Street, I believe on the east side, but not the west side.
Yes.
And so with that, if you go up to 1930, you include the high school, you include you include Doris's house, which is very important.
Which needs a lot of work.
So it just is much more inclusive, and I think it's kind of cool because then they also, that whole area can have the benefits of being designated nationally and statewide.
I think one of the things that convinced me, because of course I was advocating for that smaller area that, Perrin to whatever it was, Woodlawn, West Avenue to West Church sort of general area, is that one of the things that convinced me is that if we did expand it and made it a residential development, the reason for putting them together, if we would like to do an extension add another area, there are very, very few houses built after 1930 in the village. There's 2 houses on my general area, 2 houses built in 98. I think there's one built in 1950, but very, very scarce after 1930, and it would include a lot of properties that we could expand that district to and just make it what we're working on now, they've suggested to work on now would be like a phase 1. And then without a lot of paperwork and time, we could add groups of streets to this district. That's what convinced me more than, because I was the one who kind of drew the line and thought we should end it at the 1903, 1900 area.
Well, and then what we would do is if this was the case, if we expanded the boundaries, if we all felt this was a good idea, and of course they're saying, they're looking from the state saying what they would approve, so we got to listen a little bit to what they're saying, is that we would modify the theme of the proposed district to reflect the growth of the historic neighborhoods over time. And so that would be the narrative we'd have to work on to support this district. The good news also is they said that they have simplified the structure, the individual structure overviews, so you don't need as much detail for each of the structures or the residences. So that was really positive. And I was going to ask you, Jill, if they have sent that yet? No. Okay. Do you want me to send them?
I'll send another email to Sarah. I'm assuming that they've got a lot going on, and so she probably saw my email and said, "Oh, I'll respond to it," and then never got to it. So I will send her another email.
In review for Kyle, they basically said that, when we did Potter, the building list was quite descriptive and that they don't require as much detail any longer in a district. I mean, obviously, an individual one would require a lot of detail, but it will be interesting to see what is, the basic area, the basic amount of information we need to gather for those properties. And if it's less than what we did in Potter, we could move right along on that building list, I think.
Because that was one of our concerns when they're saying this, and we're looking at expanding and all these streets and all these houses. We're like, oh my gosh, we're going to have to do overviews for each one of them. And then it went to, we were talking about that, and it rolled into Doris's brainstorm that she actually had the 2014, I guess she was thinking the list, but anyway, it turned out to be an Excel spreadsheet of all of the streets that were surveyed in the village. And the other thing I wanted to share too is this actually brings us kind of back to what the original survey had recommended as the historic district. So that was interesting. It doesn't, not quite all of them, and we can talk about that, but so that's what you have in front of you, and that's what we have on the screen as well. And what I did is I took the Excel spreadsheet that Doris provided me, and hopefully I deleted all of the homes that were not part of this proposed area. So what we should have here is a list by street with the street number, estimated date, the rating, the potential district, and notes for all of the houses within this proposed district. And then this would be something that then we could base our work on. So, we pick out maybe, you pick out, say, 5 houses and say, in 2 weeks I'm going to have these finished, and we can just keep populating this worksheet. Because I think that this worksheet or a format, something similar to this, could be something that we could then just incorporate into our application.
I see at least one street here I'm not sure we're including in this district. But we can talk about that offline.
Well, it could be offline or it could be tonight. I think that if I want to make sure that folks are on board with this. I know we've had a little bit more time to think about it, so, and especially being there with them that day. But Dave and Kyle, if you have thoughts or questions, I did highlight, this is in black and white, but I did highlight some kind of questions, I guess, on West Church Street, starting at 140. Maybe I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure that we were including that little group of houses that went all the way to the canal. I think that's why I did that. And then there were some that I highlighted, for instance, on Perrin Street, that they did not include in the West Ave, West Church district that they had proposed. If you go to, well, I don't have page numbers, about halfway through, you'll see that the column that has the potential districts, many of those houses are not included. We had included Perrin in our district at that time.
Okay,
And then there was one other, Roselawn Avenue
that's my question.
was not included when we spoke, I think, to Chelsea and Sarah, but it is included.
I think
Maybe it's not.
Roselawn isn't on there.
No, it's,
There's a 4 or 5 at the end of Roselawn that
Right.
are on that survey, recommended district.
so I just wasn't sure, so do we just, delete all of the ones that weren't recommended for the district, and maybe, we can talk a little bit more specifically. All right,
Okay, if I could take the first point you asked, starting at
Yes.
140, because I was going to ask a similar question as to why it's only the east side of Nelson and not west. And then if we don't do west, or we don't do 140 heading toward the west, I'm not sure when we would ever capture any of those houses at a later
On the
point.
tail there on West Church.
Yeah, like, I don't know what the common thing would be
Now
to
that,
propose
now that
another
we've got
district.
this expansion all the way to Nelson, I think we should just do the district that was recommended in 2014. Because that's where we're struggling.
why does it only go up to 188?
This is the
You know.
district that was recommended.
Yeah. So, unfortunately.
So, after Nelson, must be the ones
'Cause it's-
right here. So starting with 140.
Well, because I immediately thought we should capture 140,
Yeah.
but then I don't know when we would ever capture it in the future if it's not now.
So that was my thought when I looked at this whole thing all the way to the canal, right? Those are early homes. Jill, do you, and maybe Doris too, talking about including all the way to the canal on West Church Street, I know that they were talking about SHPO not liking these little tails or little one-offs, but do you think that that would be appropriate to have that group of houses that pass Nelson Street all the way to the canal?
It may be because I'm a scaredy cat, but I think that we should just follow what Chelsea and Sarah discussed with us for now.
I can't remember what they said about this. It's
think
part
they-
of the map going up to
Yeah.
one.
I don't think they wanted us to go that far, but I could be making that up.
Okay. Do you have any thoughts about that? I mean, so
But
we
I
can
think the
maybe maybe we can hammer this out tonight so we finally get our proposed
I think we
boundaries. I'd love
should
to
do
just
that, yeah.
yes.
And then, if we feel that for whatever reason, let's go to that area, because my thoughts are, if we don't include them now, how do we bring them in later, right? And maybe we just propose it and provide a narrative with that to Chelsea and Sarah, and maybe they'll be convinced.
How many houses is it?
I think it's like 3 or 4.
Well, if you look at your
They're talking about
spreadsheet,
extending
Kyle, right here, I think that it will show on here the blanks over in the column that show the district proposed potential district. We're missing 165, 169, 170.
You
It
know,
stops at 158. What's 158? No, 166. Yeah, see, they're in the 1880s, 1860s, 1840s. The houses that are not included. in the district in the 2014 survey. So if you look at this on our spreadsheet,
So you're saying it's 169 through 184.
right, should we include those? If you can picture the homes. Like Matson Ewell's house, right?
The one next to it is a former Greek revival. It's a very old house.
It's a designated landmark. What do you think, Dave? They can always say cut them.
I think, to be fair, we never took them down Roselawn Avenue.
Oh, you're moving to Roselawn?
Yeah, we never walked down there. I recommended that they, swing through there on their way out. But the other, on the west side of Nelson, all the way up from 45 all the way to 30, those houses are in the same era as Faircroft.
Mm-hmm.
They're all the same bungalow. Craftsman style. Center colonials, colonial revivals. They're all the same style as the neighborhood on the other side. When you get to 28, it becomes 1960. That rest of that stretch. But 30, for instance, on Nelson was built in 1902 or 3. I can't recall.
So starting with 30, ending with 30, and then as you go north, are those all the ranches? So I did delete these out of this because they weren't part of the proposed area, but I could easily pop them back in. If we want to go with the west from 30 to 48. Are you looking at
The
them
west
now?
of,
So the west side of Nelson
Nelson,
Street.
okay.
Going
sorry,
from
I'm over on Roselawn now.
48 to 30 to 30.
Yes, that's what I'm suggesting. And then the rest of Nelson, if we did a 1960s district, the rest of Nelson would be included in that. No, that would make sense there.
So add
But to-
48
Okay.
to 30.
those 6, 7, 8 houses out.
It would be odd.
It's odd.
Yep. Because they are so much of that neighborhood, aren't they?
They're exactly the same
Yep.
style as the neighborhood across the street.
Mine is? Oops.
Sorry, right now. They're
you.
the exactly same era as the other side of Nelson. So,
Okay.
and, like I said, Craftsman's, colonial revivals, just like on Fifth Avenue.
So are we saying we should go, on West Church Street, we'll go all the way to the canal, and then we'll add in on Nelson, we'll add 48 down through 30, the west side of the street.
Yeah.
What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, but I mean, my gut is that, so we're just leaving out Roselawn Crescent, essentially.
So let's see what
So it's the
Roselawn
same thing
is.
Yeah.
Because how far does it go to the north? The newly proposed, what Chip was saying? Because Dora said you didn't go up to Roselawn, so it's just to west. Okay, then I feel better. If we're not, because otherwise, then if we're just leaving out Roselawn Crescent, then okay. But we're leaving out basically all the Crescent and Roselawn to the north for potentially later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because those are all 1960s.
Yes.
But
Then fine, because then again, to my point, like we'll never capture the rest of Church Street. It's just kind of hanging out there. It seems odd to not do it now.
But we do
It's a
have
very important
Roselawn.
properties there.
We do have Roselawn right here,
I know.
and that's in our spreadsheet. And so we're saying we should capture this area, and which I do have.
Oh, we are going.
Now, I
Wait,
do,
I'm so confused. So we are going to Rose. We're not ending it. So this is still on the table?
I put it on the spreadsheet because it was part of the district that they had suggested, and not, they meaning not this time, I don't think Sarah and Chelsea necessarily, but the 2014 survey, excuse me, but I do have a lot of Roselawn Avenue in the spreadsheet that we can delete. However, they are 1870, I don't know why they didn't include them originally. What street is this, Dave? Oh, Prospect Street? Yeah, Prospect Street.
yes.
Oh, I have Prospect Street in here too.
I'm having as this just keeps expanding, I am having a hard time with why we're then just keeping out small little areas now, as it just keeps getting bigger and bigger.
So we would include this. Maybe we should talk about Roselawn right now.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about Roselawn and Prospect Street? Because that's that little area that we had not included originally.
Could you, like this,
On this district
show
map
this
from
version?
the survey from 2014, they have
Can you show
seven,
on the big screen?
7 and 11 prospects.
Okay.
We can share.
Oh, I'm
Yes.
sorry, I'm talking about Cole Street.
I may have a second one.
Yeah. So at midnight tonight, we'll share it with you, okay? Got it.
So, excuse me, what do we think then about this little portion northwest that includes Roselawn and the west side of Prospect Street? Those are any of the ones that I saw that were in the 2014 proposed district. I included in the spreadsheet. It's very easy to remove them, but I thought we might as well have that conversation because, as you were saying, like what stays, what goes. If they're all located next to it and they're like 1880s, 1910s.
This is just
It's
making
getting
me
too
think of
big.
gerrymandering here, in a way. We're just adding on a little block here, a little block there. Not, knowing the dates or any specific significance off the top of my head.
It should be right.
Well, I know, but
Oh,
like
yeah.
going through each of them.
What dates are you questioning on the Roselawn section?
Yes.
And I think it's more like how do we keep expanding?
Some of the houses on Roselawn were there before the canal. That doesn't mean they're recognizable as that. They've changed quite a bit.
So do you know why? Because you were part of this conversation back in the day, Doris. Why wasn't more of Roselawn included in this district when they are of the era? Is it because they're not contributing because they've been so changed, maybe?
That might be the reason, yeah. Like I said, some of them are very old, but they're not recognizable. So they might be non-contributing, even if we went down the street and tried to evaluate them. And there might be some more in the written material for the survey that explains these districts better. So, and I haven't read that in a while. That would be good to do, I think, that if we're gonna not come to a decision tonight, we might do a little bit more digging.
Because all along, like Roselawn, isn't this kind of in your backyard? Some of this?
Well, I'm on Acton Bow.
Yeah, so, well, that's kind of your backyard. What do you think about, all of Roselawn as you move to the east and, on both sides? Because those were not included. it has a little bit of information in this spreadsheet that you have in front of you, but yes, yep. And there, if you see, it's highlighted to the left because it was not included. If it was not included, it's highlighted.
Can I ask a dumb question? So, is there a particular reason, I've pulled up the map, and I see what Barrow said this would be a good direction to go for a district, and I'm hearing that we're looking to expand that into properties that weren't listed by them. Am I hearing that correctly?
I don't know that that's really the case. I think
Okay.
we were saying, and to Dave's point, like, why even include the area in Roselawn that Barrow had suggested if we're not going to consider maybe the rest of the street? How are we making our decision on what's staying and what's leaving?
Okay.
Yes.
So the reasoning behind this, we need to be able to justify this to the neighborhood too.
Well, that's,
Yeah.
I would feel like, so if we were to include everything from Nelson to the canal on Church Street, and now picking up some of Roselawn and things to the north up to the canal, but not Roselawn Crescent. Like, what's the,
Well,
do we
Roselawn
say to the
Crescent is a different era.
it is definitely a different era, I
Right.
know, but it's like,
We're talking
Right,
about
just-
1930 as the,
1930.
is the cutoff. right
I'm more
now.
wondering
In
about to the
1960.
east here.
Did you remove the houses on Roselawn from this list that were not contributing? Could be simply a density thing where you have a cluster here, but down here there's one or two houses only that were contributing. And
I think that Barrow might have done that. That's what I'm thinking, is that there was reasoning, and maybe Doris is right, maybe there's something in the yeah. So okay, so let's leave this be, and we'll find out maybe why they made that decision. Does that sound like a good idea?
So how about I send out a link to the survey to everyone to take a look at?
Okay. It does seem like when we went down that street, there were a lot of houses that might have ended up being non-contributing.
okay, so we are in agreement on at least the east boundary,
West?
the east,
The east.
like,
Sorry, you were
so,
using this hand.
sorry. So picking up, the stuff that we're gonna pick, to the west of Perrin.
I don't know if we are. I did want to ask about Perrin. Did we all agree that we want to have both sides of Perrin included? It is not included in Barrow. Do we all want to include all of Perrin? It's on this list here, but I just want to make sure.
I definitely want to.
Because on this, we're taking none of Perrin, on this map at
Right,
least.
yeah. And so I show here, this is where I'm showing, like, there's only a few houses on Perrin that they include that are close to West Church Street. So you can see
Yeah,
in
just
this column, but I highlighted it to show it is not in the original recommendation, but we are saying we think it should be included.
There's no reason not to include both sides of the street.
Okay.
There's some very nice houses on Perrin and some others that are, needing of work. But there's still some very nice structures there, especially, there's one towards the corner that's mint condition. It's on our list to be designated.
And then the last, I think, area, so if we include Perrin, the other area that they suggested that we stop is when we get to the northeast corner, is not to include the commercial buildings.
Yes, I agree. Okay.
So are we mostly in agreement, except that we are a little concerned about what to do with that northwest
Yes.
corner? And
Yeah,
Roselawn?
to better understand the rationale for that
Yeah,
choice.
so I went through and highlighted the houses on Roselawn that are contributing according to this list, and you can tell the density kind of stops. There's a cluster here, but then there's a break of 15 houses,
Okay.
so makes a little more sense.
So, do we still want to check out
Let's just
a
look
little
at
bit
that.
more? Okay.
Do you want to do the part that has been recommended in the 2014, and then just do a little bit more research on the other section, the rest of Roselawn, before we decide? Or Roselawn versus no Roselawn?
It almost feels like it would be good to walk it again, and also look at maybe their notes. I'm not
Yeah.
too concerned about it unless, you start walking down the street and see a lot that you think, oh, well, that does have the historical nature.
I think we'd find a lot non-contributing. That's,
Yeah.
what Kyle is referring to. And,
Okay.
I don't know, why get their hopes up?
How are you feeling about this, Dave, knowing that? Does it change? Do you still want to just
Just,
hold off?
I do want to hold off. I'm just not sure yet.
But we're pretty close.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
said we've got the boundaries set. The only question is that portion of Roselawn and whether or not we feel that we can justify including that, but not including other areas. So we'll do a little research.
Yes.
Okay. Sounds good. I think we've moved forward. Did anyone, I can send out an email and ask for, but what do you think about the idea of everyone choosing like 5 houses and getting started? Not giving someone a whole street, but, if all of us, and Chuck wants to do, I think, the historical narrative he was saying.
Yeah.
He would like to maybe not do the entire thing, but he offered to do that, to work on that. So he might not
So-
want to do the individual houses, is what I'm saying.
So I'm doing Perrin. I can take the whole street. That's not a problem, because to be honest, there are some non-contributing ones there, so it's not that many houses really. But I really, really need to know, before I go crazy here, what I need to provide them
That's
in this
true.
building list.
That's
I
true.
have to have that.
I
know,
emailed
I-
Sarah while we were here.
I get deep into this, and I really need
Agreed.
not to.
Well, especially since now we know that the same level of information that was completed for the Potter District is not necessary for this one. We don't want people to be doing additional work. So if I don't hear from her we'll give her next Wednesday, I'll call her and just check in and say that, we're anxious to get ready on this, and get moving, and we know that obviously everybody here is a volunteer and they're giving of their time to make this happen for the community, and we don't want you to spend 50,000 hours when you only need to spend 10,000 hours.
Oh,
It's going to be that sort
speaking
of commitment.
hours-
I see Kyle.
Speaking of hours, I don't know where we are with trying to get grants this year, next year, but we have to keep track of our hours.
So I have to complete the reporting by the 15th, so I will be working on that as well next week.
So are we all good with this for today? Okay. So I don't know if anyone has anything that they wanted to report. I had a few things that I was going to suggest Jill give us some updates on. Are you ready for your list?
So I can give a little brief update on the zoning code update. Obviously, we're continuing to work on that. As far as requirements and regulations for historic preservation, we're not quite there yet. We haven't created a draft yet. So when that time comes, of course, the Historic Preservation Commission will be the first ones to take a look at the draft to provide comment on and we'll go from there. So I anticipate it'll be a couple months, if not more. 58 South Main.
Oh,
I'm
can I
sorry.
ask another question
Yep.
regarding that? Will the Historic Preservation Commission be involved at all, or I guess we can review as individuals, but be involved with the design standards?
So what I think eventually, and granted, this is all up in the air at this point. I think what will happen is we'll start crafting, the zoning working group will work with the consultant to craft those design regulations for commercial and residential properties, and we'll seek input from obviously the land use board members, the public, anybody that would provide some feedback. So again, we talk about all these items that we want to be in the code. We are a long way from those things, the draft.
Thank you.
The next item is 58 South Main Street. I think everybody has noticed that construction is moving along. So the brick, I think, is almost complete, I would say, in the building. It's gone quite fast. There was also the desire to have an update on 110 Holbert. If you recall, this was a fence that was approved. The contractor has met all of the conditions that were put on the approval by the Historic Preservation Commission, other than the painting of the fence to be green. And I spoke with our code enforcement officer, Mark, about this. It is practice to, when you are installing pressure-treated wood, to allow it to dry over a season to ensure that when that paint is applied, that it actually adheres to the wood and that it is the same color everywhere. He explained to me that there are a lot of things that can go wrong if you paint it too quickly. So that being said, that's something that we will keep our eye on. But as you know, the approvals that you issue are good for 1 year. So that applicant has the opportunity to continue to work on things for that 1 year time period. In this case, we are understanding of why they haven't painted it quite yet. We want the project to look awesome. I wouldn't force them to paint it now because, again, the wood isn't dry. It's going to get cold, so they will likely paint it in spring or early summer.
Is there something that we need to do to extend the C of A because they haven't?
No, so I don't believe we've gotten to a year yet. I could be wrong. I'll double check that. As long, in the permit world, as long as somebody is continuing to work on a project, we never close out the permit. It's never ended per se. If, let's say, trying to think of a good example. Let's say somebody just did not start the project, and we get to that time period where, they're a month away. Well, our code says that you have to be significantly complete with that project, that permit, before that year time period. There has to be a significant effort. You can't just pull a permit at day 364. So there are requirements as to how that process works. What I'm hopeful that we will have in the updated zoning code is an opportunity for the boards to grant extensions of time for approvals. Sometimes things happen. Sometimes, we saw with COVID that often people couldn't get materials that they needed for projects. So if you got an approval and you were waiting, extensive period of time for that product, you might have been in need of an extension of time. We don't have that in our code currently. Is that helpful?
It definitely is, and I'm wondering, I know that there's a neighbor who's concerned about the progress. Do we know specifically what they're thinking has not been done to?
No, and so I guess that's what's a little bit confusing. There are times where perhaps neighbors, and I'm not speaking to this specific situation, but neighbors are unhappy with the decision that a board has made. There's a process and procedure in our code to allow for somebody to challenge that within a set time period. So if the applicant is complying with the decision that a board has made, they're compliant with that decision, regardless of the thoughts and feelings of neighbors.
It might be the paint. I don't know.
Perhaps, but Mark has provided me a lot of education on fencing. Are there any additional updates that any of the board members would like to provide?
I was trying to think if there was anything else I had talked to you about.
I guess I can just remind everyone, I just sent an email out that we are going to have an all-board training on January 15th from 6 to 8 p.m. It will be here. We'll cover ethics and also the roles and responsibilities of all the land use boards so that you know what zoning board does and they know what you do. I think it's a great opportunity to spend time with your colleagues and also learn what each board does.
I'm sorry to bring this up at this point, but don't we need to discuss a chair for another year, for next year, and make a recommendation to the board?
We could add that to our December agenda.
Okay. I just
Yeah,
know
I'm glad
if
you
we
brought that up.
shouldn't discuss it now, and the timing of their decision, I never understand that exactly.
Yep, so
But that's why I'm asking in November if we shouldn't be discussing it now.
we should add it to the agenda for
Okay.
December because they will cover that at the organizational meeting in January.
In January, okay. Sometimes the organizational meeting was done in December. So that's what's my concern. Was.
Okay.
Okay.
So I will add that to my list for our December meeting.
And maybe, I don't know if next meeting we want to go over our goals for the year, what we've accomplished, and anything that might be upcoming, because, you know, we had talked about doing the scavenger hunt maybe every other year, or is there another idea? And kind of, we have so many ideas. But just seeing what we've accomplished to date and maybe what's coming up.
I do like that idea. I think we should talk about if anybody on the commission has ideas for some other bigger village event or something for the upcoming year. Just because what we learned from the last scavenger hunt we did, it takes a long time to organize these things. So I think each of us should come with a potential idea or for something next year.
I don't know if anyone has anything else they want to bring to the table. Does someone want to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. We are adjourned.